Well, so again, why am I bringing all this up? Because I think, as many of us do, that 9/11 was simply a pretext for a premeditated war. This was a war not of necessity, but a war of choice. There were alternatives. There were definitely alternatives. The Daily Telegraph in London, which is not one of my favourite newspapers by any means. I think it was the required reading for Margaret Thatcher, so it's not really. But the Daily Telegraph for December the 8th on 2001 carried a story which few other papers actually took up, which was the issue of the United States demanding the handing over of Osama bin Laden, which, as Dr. Qureshi said, the Taliban government initially refused to do. The reason they initially refused to do is that they wanted some evidence that Osama bin Laden was actually guilty of the charges that were being made. And the United States was not prepared or not able at that time to show that evidence. That why would a government give up somebody who was regarded as a war hero for their actions against the Soviet armies in Afghanistan? Why would they willingly give it up to another superpower? But the Daily Telegraph story proceeds to say that because of the pressure put on the Taliban decided finally that they would surrender Osama bin Laden to the Pakistan government, and they would hand him over for trial under the regime of Musharraf. The problem is that the United States did not want to deal with these negotiations. It wanted unilateral right to basically to take Osama bin Laden and failing that to use 9/11 as a pretext for occupation. Part of the problem is that the conventional way of dealing with terrorism or mafiosoism is to try to hunt people down and take them to the International Criminal Court. This, of course, is what happened to Milosevic and to some of the perpetrators of the genocide in Rwanda. They've been taken to the International Criminal Court. Why did the United States not favor that as an option? Because it hasn't ratified the agreement. It doesn't believe in the legitimacy of the International Criminal Court. It's one of the few countries which has refused to sign because it does not want its own soldiers hauled before a public forum like that. So there's a number of reasons why 9/11 became a pretext for a premeditated war in Iraq. I say premeditated because you go back to 1992 and you read the document of the Project for the New American Century, and you read documents which came out of that, and these were authored by Cheney and Wolfowitz and Bush. Not so much Bush, I don't think he had marbles, but certainly Daniel Pearl, the whole of the Bush cabal, as you call it. And these documents got translated into the 2000 document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, and then the National Security Strategy Statement, which came out in 2002. What do all these things tell us? They tell us the United States had prepared the ground for what it called preventive and preemptive wars. And it also established itself as a kind of, to use its words, an international constable for trouble spots. In other words, it was giving itself extraterritorial jurisdiction to go into other countries and to undertake regime changes wherever and whenever it saw fit. And I would compare this, and maybe some people won't like this, well, maybe they won't mind here, but if it was a larger group, I suspect I'd be in for some conflict. But this is no different from Hitler pretending about the provocations in the Sudetenland and marching into Czechoslovakia on a whim in 1938. It's no different, I suppose, from what the United States was to do in 2003, the so-called weapons of mass destruction, the linking of Saddam Hussein to 9/11, where according to Richard Clarke, the US counterterrorism expert, we know that that was untrue. It was simply a pretext for going in. And although the Canadian government is always telling us, Afghanistan is not Iraq, don't confuse the two missions, believe me, if you look at the research, they mirror each other on a smaller scale. The same deception, the same justification, and the same underlying intentions to go into other countries with impunity.